The panel discussion's topic is one size doesn't fit all, customizing user acquisition approaches by category. Over the next hour, we will dive into main trends, challenges, talk about them, explore innovative solutions that are captivating the attention of the UA experts across all the niche and verticals. We're going to cover a lot of different verticals and also topics. And as you can see, we have a really very good panel of the industry leaders and the experts and seasonal practitioners from completely different companies. And I would like to, first of all, extend the warm welcome to the first panelist and ask everybody when I'm going to be presenting you just to say a couple of sentences about yourself so that our audience would know a little bit more about you. So the first one is Thomas Petit, and he is the app growth consultant.
Yes, hello, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Very happy to be here. I hope the sound is okay. It's not my usual setup. I'm very honored to be with everyone else here, and I think Peggy did a fantastic job at opening and warming up this App Growth Week. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm known online as Thomas Petit. I work in the subscription app space, and hopefully we can all bring you some inputs between all of us today in this panel. So happy to be here. Thanks.
I'm so sure. Great to have you, Thomas. Welcome. And the next panelist that we have today is Mariusz Gąsiewski. He is the CEE Mobile Gaming and Apps Lead at Google. Welcome, Mariusz.
Hello. It's a really great pleasure to join this amazing panel. So I work at Google, working with top mobile gaming and apps companies. I work a lot of data. I work a lot of with like analyzing the trends. So we'll be happy to share my perspective with the crowd.
Love it. Happy to have you here. Okay, moving further, and we have Thomas Tierney joining us from Dentsu, where he is the client manager app. Welcome, Thomas.
How you doing? You okay? Yeah, I guess just I've recently just joined Dentsu myself, so I've come from client side to agency side, which is massive shock, which is fun. But yeah, definitely getting my hands stuck into multiple clients, learning as I go as well, which is really fun. And yeah, looking forward to sharing some information with you guys.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Looking forward to it. Then joining us today would be the Daniel Lupu, who is the paid search marketing manager at Skyscanner. Welcome, Daniel.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Daniel, senior marketing manager at Skyscanner, where I'm managing the paid app activity across the main acquisition channels, with a focus on Apple search ads and Google ads. Really nice to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
That's great. Wonderful that you're with us. And last but not least is Paul Davey, who is the senior mobile marketing manager at AutoTrader. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Galina. Yes, so Paul from AutoTrader. I've been with AutoTrader about 4 years, but in the mobile industry about a decade now, believe it or not. But please don't ask me any questions about cars. I'm not a mechanic. I can maybe help you find a make or model, but it's not my area of expertise.
Well, that's good you're saying that beforehand. So yeah, I'm encouraging everybody to add your questions in the chat area. So not about the cars to Paul, obviously, but any other questions about mobile growth. And yeah, I'm super delighted to host this panel discussion today. So again, my name is Galina Schneider. I'm the VP of Customer Success and Support at SplitMetrics. So without further ado, let's dive into the conversation of the mobile journey. So in the beginning of 2023, we heard a lot of pessimistic forecasts on consumer spending, ad budgets, app revenue, everything is bad, collapse of the industry. So Mariusz, is the industry on the path to recovery, or are we going to be having any more challenges ahead? What do you think?
So actually, if we look at the latest data, it's actually really improving. So if we even let's look at the data AI data. In October 2023, we had like 12% year over year, which was the second month in the row with such growth, because the September 2023 was with 12% year over year revenue as well. which is like a really big change, because at the beginning of the year we had mostly negative growth rate, and in the middle of the 2022 it happened that we had the months with the growth rate around like -12, -14% year over year. So that definitely it's improving on the mobile gaming side. If we look at the on the non-gaming in general, it's really growing in the last months. So actually, if we look at the revenue based on some even learnings from the mobile gaming, where for example, like topics like subscriptions became way more popular versus in the past. So that topic was really growing, but still actually it's growing. It moved from double-digit growth rate to single-digit growth rate, but still on the positive side. What we see, of course, as well in that growth rate, the emerging markets and tier 2, tier 3 markets matter more and more. So in general, over the last months, still, of course, US is the biggest market, but is kind of below average. And there are some markets, even including, for example, like Poland, Turkey, South Korea, that are really growing very fast, very often with double-digit growth rate, even sometimes higher than 20% year over year. So I think that's one side. Of course, the other side, which is sometimes a bit more challenging, is that, for example, if we look at the data and we look by the perspective of the data, for example, in mobile gaming, I look at the data and I look at the top games again by the revenue estimation, and like on Android, almost 40% of the revenue from those games are created by the games that were created in 2017 and earlier. So in iOS, it's actually this share is even higher, which means again this revenue concentration actually makes the life more difficult, especially for new entries in terms of the barrier. And of course, it's a bit lower on the non-gaming side, where usually we have I would say bigger difference between like 1, 2, maybe a few leading apps in the specific category. But we can expect this concentration to be growing as well.
Oh, that's great, Mariusz. Thank you so much for the insights. I mean, that's good to hear that there is an opportunity, and we are very positive people in that case. And following what you just said, about the opportunity and that the growth of the market is there, I would like to ask Thomas Petit here to comment in general on maybe any pivotal trends that you are seeing that are shaping the user acquisition strategies across different niches today to use this opportunity of growth.
Thanks, Galina. Very good introduction from Mariusz. And before I get to trends, it makes me think that my whole career I've looked at gaming and looked at them as pioneers, and basically not copy, but inspired by the fact that it was so much advanced, and try to bring this to non-gaming. And that's worked very well for me. Look at what the best are doing and try to bring it elsewhere. I think that gap is shrinking, but we still have a lot to learn of what's happening in gaming today, especially concentration and how you survive when you're not the number one. So that's obviously very true because it's maturing in non-gaming as well. And there is space for number 2, 5, 10, or 50, but not in the same scale. So I think that was a very good opening from Mariusz. Other than that, I was expecting more change this year, and I think the fact that we didn't move to Scan 4 or that fingerprinting is still, let's say, tolerated, to put it mildly, as delayed a little bit major changes that I think are going to happen next year. So I'm very much looking forward to Scan 4 and obviously to the Android Privacy Sandbox that is going to come roughly at the same time, I guess, a little bit before or after, it doesn't matter. So that will be for next year. I was expecting it for this year, but we've all prepped and nothing coming. So that was interesting to see. On the channels, obviously, because of measurement, the change were not that significant. I think the bigger ones are coming. I think one of the things that really was interesting this year is how we move from normal ad campaign into what TikTok calls sparks, or Instagram or Meta would call it boosting the content of other. Instead of posting on your account, you would put money to push content on others people's account. And I think that was quite I mean, that's not new, but it really took a very different scale this year. And that's a very interesting one to follow. And last but not least, maybe I kept the cake for the last, is obviously, like we saw in the opening with Peggy, how AI is gonna change, like obviously on creative, but like kind of it's transformational, like how it's changing a lot of things that goes from production, data analysis, creative, obviously, campaign optimization, like it's really all through. So I think we have the occasion to go a little bit more in depth, but I wanted to start with those ones that have shaped a little bit this year and are a really good opening to what's coming next year.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for adding more pieces to this puzzle. And I think there was a great comment also about the gaming companies being like a driven force for many new things that are coming in the industry. So here I would also like to
I'll add a funny one, Galina. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I had that saying that I haven't said for a very long time, but before I worked in apps about 10 years ago, I used to work in e-commerce, and I did the exact same. What I was looking at porn, because they were the pioneer. They pioneered payments in the 90s. They pioneered conversion optimization. Like, it was unbelievable. And so in a extrapolated way, like I look at games for my non-gaming apps, just the same way I was looking at porn for my e-commerce businesses before.
I love this inside story. We're all coming from the crazy 90s, right? So yeah, wonderful. So what exactly is happening then in the other niches? Yeah, if we are talking porn, games, what is happening in the travel niche? So maybe Daniel, you want to share a little bit on maybe some top performing channels or anything that you see that is sticking in your area.
Thanks, Galina. Yeah, I think travel is an interesting sector. Not long ago, the industry was significantly impacted by COVID. That's when a lot of advertisers completely paused their paid UA activity. Then, as lockdowns lifted, I think businesses gravitated towards, let's say, the biggest, more established channels like Google Ads and Apple Search Ads, Facebook, and so on. And then at some point, those channels, as those channels reached maturity, I think travel businesses wanted to tap into new audiences. And that's where platforms like TikTok maybe come in, even though it's not very new. So businesses wanted to tap into the power of influencer campaigns and user-generated content to create that sense of trust and authenticity. Then in terms of the new channels, I think we've seen relatively decent growth in terms of connected TV. And a lot of businesses are using DSPs, especially when it comes to retargeting. So yeah, there are like a lot of new channels into the mix recently. But something I wanted to eventually call out is that whenever businesses test new channels, if they don't see the same performance as they see on one of their more established channels, they tend to hit the pause button immediately. And I think that can be a mistake sometimes. So what I'd encourage them to do is to look at performance from a blended perspective. So you look at the blended CPI or the blended ROAS across all your channels, and you might notice that performance isn't that bad, and you'll be able to drive those incremental installs, keep the channel live, and eventually have budget to test new channels as well. So yeah, that's my take on it.
That's great, Daniel. Thank you so much for already some hands-on examples here on how to look at the UA strategy. That's wonderful. And I think that we shouldn't leave the channel mix diversification topic without talking to Paul as well and asking for his perspective on the UA channel mix across your vertical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Auto Trader is perhaps a little bit different. So maybe, if I just ground a little bit in terms of where Auto Traders come from. So we're based in the UK, but perhaps for those that are not here in the UK, they won't know that actually Auto Trader was founded back in the 80s as a print magazine. So, you know, we have really established a very strong brand here in the UK, and that definitely does afford us a degree of strength when it comes to user acquisition. But for anyone who's purchased a car in the last couple of years, I think you'll recognize that buying a car is not something that you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. You know, it is at best, generally, it's kind of a 3 to 4 year kind of cycle. And therefore the length of the car buying journey is you know, pretty much, you know, it's over 3 months long. And obviously, as a result of that, it has kind of multiple touch points when it comes to UA. So for us, you know, we do have to use a lot of kind of intent indicators that are a little bit further up the funnel, because, you know, we don't actually monetize directly on the platform as well. So we don't sell the car directly. So it just does bring some challenges in terms of how we approach UA. And certainly if I consider some of the new tools like Scan, you know, which have felt very aligned to kind of gaming and gambling, they don't work for kind of our business model, because it's obviously a 3-month plus buying cycle. So we have had to rely a little bit more on kind of historical data, you know, and that's kind of driven us to the, you know, the Apple search ads, the Facebooks, the Google app campaigns, which have just historically worked so well for us. And is sadly probably a little bit of a reflection of their market dominance as well. But I think what's interesting is certainly over the last 12 months, we have felt the need to, you know, refresh that creative a little bit more often. And I think positively, we've seen some new tools from some of those providers that now allow us to kind of take that user journey a little bit deeper into the app experience. And I think we'll come on a little bit later to perhaps talk about custom product pages as one of those as an example. I think just one controversial point of opinion that I have is we do run a very strong brand defense campaign on Apple search ads. And I know there are a lot of people out there that perhaps new into the mobile industry, launching apps for the first time, may well feel that that's not the right thing to do. But certainly from the perspective of brands that have strong establishment in the mobile app industry, you know, we've switched it off at times, we've switched it back on, and we simply can't offset the loss of audience that we see when we switch that campaign off. So I think for us, it performs very, very strongly indeed.
Oh, that's interesting insights on Apple search ads already. Now, thank you so much for sharing, Paul. And before we are going a little bit deeper into AI, how about we look into our chat and some of the questions? Maybe you would like to get challenged a little bit. And oh, Thomas, yeah, I see you're excited. So, for example, this one, we've recently launched a meditation app, iOS. Yeah, something from other category. Would you recommend using meta ads for acquiring our first users? What targeting strategies should we consider? Thanks in advance. Does anybody want to help?
Getting a bit more tactical, maybe I'll take it. Yeah, we talk about new channels. Different products have different needs because of the stage they're at. Obviously, Auto Trader or Skyscanner are not gonna use the exact same tactics, but also the same channel as a new coming app. For me, like starting on Meta is a complete no-brainer in this particular vertical. It's almost, if you can't make it on Meta, it's possible you're not going to make it anywhere, because it's the one channel that most of the vertical has managed to grow on and really crack. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it does mean I do believe it's a strong choice to start there. For about 2 years, I would definitely try to balance it out with TikTok, which creative direction is a bit different, and you might find success on one and not on the other. So that would be the two I start with before getting to diversification, like the other panelists have done. And if I had one recommendation, because I'm seeing this a lot, mistake from new coming app, is you can't go small. You have to go big from the get-go because of how Scan is working, and also because of how optimization is working today based on data and on machine learning. So if you're feeding machine learning 8 conversions, it can't do anything for you. Like, it can't be done manually. And sadly for the smaller developer, that means that it's hard because there's an entry barrier. Like, you definitely don't want to be spending $500 or $5,000. It's just not enough to prove that the channel is working. You need to keep insisting with more money, but also a little bit more time for the campaigns to settle. So to the question, yes, start on Meta. That's good. Don't go too small. Go big or go home. As would be my recommendation.
That's cool. Thank you so much, Thomas. That's wonderful that we can get some advices directly from the panelists today. And so maybe since you already got the mic, we can then continue with you and talking about the artificial intelligence and in general how that can be used in the daily activities, and the daily activities obviously of the user acquisition managers, and where do you see the most potential for the UA?
What's fantastic for us is that because it works in the background on the servers of Meta and Google, we're not realizing that it's been like, what, 6-7 years that actually campaigns are running on machine learning and automation, because it just happens. So 10 years ago, as a media buyer, I would like run a ton of ad groups, run a lot of micro optimization, change my bids, targeting, whatnot. This is all already automated for a few years. So it's good to be aware that that part is so advanced already, even if we don't really see it. And sometimes it has been painful. It came with a lot of pros and a few cons, but it's already a reality on the campaign management side. I think a lot of the talk today on the creative, and we have touched it a little bit. I think Peggy did a fantastic job. I don't want to dig too deep. I think what people are understanding, well, I'm really excited to see how video is improving now, like because we started on text and then image, and we have some kind of animation, and the one Peggy showed was fantastic. But for video, we're not there yet at the level that most marketers would want for their creative. But at the pace we're going, we're talking months at most. So this is exciting. I think there's one point that gets a little bit undervalued at the moment is how AI can be used for creative analysis, like not creative production, but really like feeding a lot of metrics on top funnel metrics and hook rate, hold rates, and CTR, and percentage of the video view, and like a bunch of information like this, and actually make this. There are a few tools in the market that do that. A bunch of vendors, Replay is doing it. One I forgot the name, VidCap or something. Does this. I know AppsFlyer is cooking something as well. Like there's a bunch of tools where not just of interpreting the data, but also they can read into the creative and say, oh, in these two ads, the character had a yellow t-shirt and the two ads worked. And like really make connecting dots that as humans, when you're testing 20 creative per week or whatnot, like you're just not gonna reach that level of, oh, this end card is always working. And you don't have to rely on taxonomy and naming conventions. Like it's so much more powerful. So I'm not going to dig on much on creative and even ASO, but I think there are other corners that AI is really where AI is already changing the game for the most advanced. So yeah, like I said at the very beginning, think of it as a transformational thing and not like, oh, there's AI, I'm going to produce my creative with it. Like there's so much more than that. Like it's really try to think of every single bit of things you're doing every day and how it can apply there. I think that's a good mindset to have. You don't know what you're going to discover, but at least try to dig and see for yourself.
Yeah, that's great approach. Something like use artificial intelligence to enhance your human intelligence. So and kind of like walk around. That's really nice. And maybe Mariusz, you would like to add something from your perspective, like especially gaming, maybe since you are more involved into that niche. You know, gamers being pioneers of that. Anything you might want to add here to what Thomas just mentioned, and maybe to what Peggy also.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely interesting and like complex topic. Yeah, it exists for many years already, and I think there are like a few not obvious aspects of it. Yeah, for example, like the one is that in general, like we have the growth of the AI driven mechanics and approaches, but it's still based on the data. Yeah, so like shit in, shit out. Yeah, which means that in general, like it creates like really strong motivation to create strong cooperation between creative, data, and UA teams. Yeah, because at the end of the day, like in many cases, what we have as the input for the UA team is just the for example some input created by another team, for example from the data perspective. Yeah. And I think we see actually more and more often. Yeah, I was really analyzing, for example, data AI estimates around growth and UA like growth rates. Yeah, and it was actually quite interesting to see that in general the percentage of the growth of the paid installs was actually higher in case of the bigger companies than smaller ones, which is actually in many cases, for example, is coming from the aspect that like more and more UA-driven platforms are actually based on the data, which means that in general, if you have really good approach to the data and you have quite a lot of data, then it's easier for you to use that potential and power of that AI. Then I think what is happening as well is that what we see that like one obvious approach towards the AI is, for example, creatives, and we see it more and more. But like the other one, which is getting more and more common, is, for example, understanding LTV curve, yeah, understanding where is the breakthrough for the profit versus the revenue, because not necessarily always the growth of the revenue means growth of the profit. Then understanding what is the trade-off between the scale and the risk, because okay, on one side you can more rely, for example, on the long-term metrics and long-term data, but then of course it creates more potential risk, versus on the other side you can use more like short-term data, but then it can actually be very short-term driven in terms of okay, it creates growth of the users for short term and then will not grow the business in the long term. Yeah, so I think these topics related to understanding, for example, proxy for the LTV, like what are like the events that are early in the user journey, and we can really based on them understand the LTV of the users. I think those parts are actually getting more and more interesting and are not really trivial in the life of the UI person. And I would say more and more they have the influence on the final success, especially that if we like include together, let's see, this creative part, data part, and UA part, then we have together a lot of attributes together, which means like, let's see, you have the performance of creative on the general level, like A can be better than B, but if you go deeper and you start to look by the country, start to look by the platform, start to look by the specific profile of the user, the difference could be huge. And again, the main base and the main condition for using AI for that is really having the access to good and consent data, because now it's actually not only about getting the data, but it's about getting consent data where the users agree to share the data, which will be probably not so easy in the future.
Okay, thank you very much for such an extensive answer. And you were also touching base right now, like around AI, obviously, but also LTV and talking about ROI and this all. I would like to hear also the perspective of Thomas Tierney, as you had an opportunity to work both on the customer side and on the agency side. In general, like around the ROI topic, how important this is for the customers and for the agencies. What are the maybe the various channels and the ways you would establish there to work towards the ROI, and whether it's also in connection to the user acquisition strategies or maybe the creative strategies and trends that you might be using around that topic.
So yeah, I guess throughout the year, from what I've seen, is a lot of people want to be on platforms, on every single platform. They want to have their fingers in all of the pies. And that's not the best tactic to have. I feel like the best strategy is to have your bread and butter, which I would always resort to. UAC and ASA is your bread and butter. And looking at the chat, most of the apps seem relatively new to the market. And just from that perspective, understand what your users are doing within the app. Take those learnings and then branch out to other platforms, because then your creative and everything will come with it, and just add that on as you go. I feel like people are too eager to start making TikTok advertising, start making Facebook advertising, YouTube advertising. Your costs are just going to go up. Keep it as simple as possible when you first start out, and it will just grow naturally. Take those learnings and just let it do what it needs to do. And then obviously you can start to take a bit more risks. Obviously, as the app grows, hopefully your budget will grow as well, which is what I've seen. And just take that forward and just keep, basically, don't stop A/B testing. That's what I always say to people. Always be looking for the next new thing and take advantage of it and just see how far you can go with it. I would steer away from, a lot of people just think because they're on social platforms, social's the strongest point. It's definitely not. Don't pay influencers loads of money to promote your app. The blue tip warriors, as I call them. Sorry if you're on this call, but yeah. Yeah, because as a consumer of apps, I don't know if anyone else is in the same boat, but as soon as I see an influencer pushing an ad, I'm just like, that's a paycheck for you. You don't care about the brand or the reputation of it. So definitely something to look into. But yeah, that's probably all that I have to add on that one.
That's some very great insights. And in general, I do believe that, you know, testing, A/B testing, try and error is something that we all live and breathe in mobile advertising and marketing, and that's something that helps us move forward. Like your favorite, by the way, if I want to ask, if I'm to ask static or video, what would you say, or both, or with regards to creatives?
I'd say video, just because of how massive and scalable it is. I mean, you look at TikTok, Instagram Reels, I think YouTube Shorts, they're all around 2 billion monthly active users or something ridiculous like that. And your market and your reach and the scalability is there. I feel like with a still image, you just get lost in terms of advertising. In terms of obviously bringing it back down to your ASO, try and just be different. I say that there's a saying, I think it's called habituation or something like that. I think it's called, where if you looked in the App Store now, most apps with their stills, the phone split down the middle with that journey. We're becoming mundane and numb to that sort of static image, and that doesn't appeal to a user. So it's really an argument over what your brand messaging is. Don't sacrifice your brand for performance. Always keep that foundation and just really understand what drives a user to your app, but don't tarnish your brand's name in order to drive like a cheap user or someone who's not going to stay around for long. So always keep that in the back of your mind. Don't just feel I have to drive X amount of installs. Like have some pride in what you're trying to promote.
That's some great advices over there. Thank you very much for that. And obviously, all the creatives and branding and whatever, it all has to drive to the max ROAS, to ROI, everything that you know, the advertisers want to get then at the end. And I would like to ask Paul to share maybe some experiences on optimizing the campaigns or Apple search ads campaigns, to that matter, to get the maximum ROAS on Auto Trader. I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, no problems. And this will probably be a really shameless plug for SplitMetrics. So that's yeah.
That was my idea.
Yeah. So apologies for anyone who's on an alternative platform. Yeah, exactly. So and yeah, we started life with SplitMetrics probably about we're about 18 months in now. And before SplitMetrics, I must add that we weren't with any other kind of external provider. We were using the native Apple search ads platform. And obviously for anyone who's used that, you know, if you haven't tried an external provider, SplitMetrics is one. I'm sure there's many others as well. You will quickly realize it is a pretty horrific platform to use. And I think, you know, some of the things that immediately kind of stood out to me when we started to use SplitMetrics is the fact that obviously if you're using an MMP, you can pull in some of the custom events that obviously are way down the funnel beyond kind of taps and installs. And obviously you can start to optimize to some of those key things. So for us, it was kind of lead generation, cost per lead. We had ad views as well. And you quickly realize that obviously there are particular campaigns and keywords that obviously drive great install volume, but actually the quality of those installs is not necessarily such a good thing. So obviously it helps us to kind of optimize towards some of those better performing campaigns in terms of some of those custom events. And I think crucially, one of the positive steps that we've taken with the team is we've now started to run automation campaigns as well. So we're not a particularly big performance marketing team here, and Apple search ads requires constant kind of changing and iteration to see what obviously competitors are doing, share of voice, where they're targeting kind of particular keywords. You've got to constantly evolve your keyword discovery activity. So for us, being able to deploy some of our automated campaigns around removing kind of non-performing keywords or optimizing keywords for particular cost per tap against core KPIs, I think has been a really instrumental step in terms of improving our performance quite significantly. And I think probably the last one is obviously there now are some great new opportunities in the market. So custom product pages is one that obviously everyone's got quite excited about. And to be honest, I was a little bit skeptical at the beginning. I think you can't change all of the different elements on the product page that perhaps are the most influential things like the title or subtitle. It's very much limited to kind of screenshots. But for a company such as Auto Trader, where you can buy, sell used cars, new cars, electric cars, motorbikes, e-bikes, there's so much you're trying to convey in such a small set of screenshots. You simply can't do it all in one product page. And I think that has kind of really encouraged us to look at custom product pages. So we've just introduced one around selling, and we've optimized the screenshots to just purely present workflow, the app workflow around selling. And what we've seen from that is some really positive results in terms of tap through rate, conversion rate, and ultimately it's driven kind of an increase in downloads from those particular keywords. And also our cost per install has come down kind of around 20%. So, it does feel a bit of heavy lifting to obviously sometimes work with creative teams to get screenshots, but I highly encourage you to look at custom product pages if you are wanting to talk about particular features of your app to your audience.
That sounds really cool. Thank you so much. And I do believe the CPP is a great thing that appeared, and there is a lot of potential there. And some companies still kind of did not uncover that how to use it in the right way. So that's great that you also mentioned that. And thank you so much for sharing your experience. And since this topic in general, ROAS and campaign optimization is so important, and everybody is usually kind of all the questions are kind of driving around that. Maybe we can also stay here for a while. And Thomas Petit, would you maybe like to share the universal UA tactics that can maximize ROAS across various categories, maybe some insights, maybe something about CPP or anything that you would like to share on that matter?
Is everything really universal, except the fact that we all want more ROAS and more skill? Because the thing is, when a tactic gets widely used, it gets fatigue as well. Once everybody is doing it, then it doesn't work as well. And I think it's Thomas Tierney who said that before, every apps out there have the same screenshot, and maybe it's time to do something different and try and stand out. So I mean, it's just a bit of a pun, but it's also a bit of a mindset thing to have. There's no universal hack that's going to work forever and for everybody. And we touched on a few things here already. I mentioned scale, don't go too small. Obviously, because it's automated, now it's really hands-off. You have to make your bets about the events you're feeding, what we optimize towards and the budget, but you have to let go. I see way too marketers try to micromanage their campaign and change every 2 days and go up and go down and remove creative. Machine learning is extremely efficient if you understand the way it works, and if you start changing your bids and your budget and your creative every 2 days, it's doomed to fail. I mean, it just doesn't work this way. So you just have to embrace the way it is. So that would be another one. Don't be too impatient. Sometimes it's tough because the results are not what you want at the beginning, and there's a learning period, and you're not on your goals, but you have to swallow it. You have to put a minimum budget and a minimum of time before you make decisions. Don't be too impatient. That would be another one. And obviously, as most of this gets automated and you've got less work, strategic work at the beginning, but then you let it go. A lot of the work is on the asset that you feed. For me, basically, the two big, not just for me, the two big things is what you optimize towards and the creative assets that you're fitting in there. So obviously, most of the battle is on the creative assets. This is when you're going to win or lose. So try a lot, keep A/B testing, like was said as well, but inspire from others, stand out as well, like go a bit. I see a lot of people do the mistake of trying things that are too similar. So be a bit radical about testing really new things, like not a variant of the same thing again. And maybe the last one, and I think is a good segue because we wanted to talk about measurement a little bit. And there was a mention before, like we want ROAS, but at the end of the day, this platform, they're not going to optimize for the LTV that's going to happen in 6 months or 2 years or whatever. And so you have to use proxies in the short term. And I think there's a lot of work there about what is the best proxy for you that helps machine learning gets faster action, but that still correlate well with your goal. And as a marketer, really interpret it well because it's only a proxy and some kind of traffic is not going to behave the same. Scan is extremely limited in this matter, and not having the cohorting is really hindering our ability to drive performance. That's also one of the reasons I'm a little bit excited because we can extend the window to 30 days and see how those cohorts are evolving, because day zero behavior is never going to be like the perfect way to estimate the value of a user over his lifetime. So yeah, summarizing up, go big, don't be impatient, work recklessly on your creative again and again and again, being more radical about your approach. And when you look at the data, think a lot about this proxy to long-term value ratios. That would be my 4 big direction to drive long-term ROAS, not for next week, but for next 6 months and next 2 years.
But maybe actually to add here, because I think in general ROAS is a very interesting topic, but I think what is really enforcing now is really strong cooperation with the product teams. Like, what is the roadmap for the product? Like, how actually, how much risk we can take. Yeah. So if we, for example, have a very strong roadmap that will be, growing the feature that will increase the long-term, day 30 plus ROAS, for example, then of course we can have more risk versus if we see that there will not be much product development on that side and the product will be free. So whatever we have during the next 30 days, that's what we have. Yeah. So I think this cooperation with the development teams, understanding how the LTV curve will be changing in the future versus what is now, I think creates this better platform to choose what is the good trade-off between risk and the scale, because at the end of the day, always we need to kind of take this trade-off. Yeah, we could have say, okay, I want to have the ROAS back in 7 days, but very often for many games or for many products, the scale will be very small, sometimes even not possible, for example. Yeah, so I think understanding, for example, what is the cash flow of the company as well. Yeah, so like if we go and extend, for example, the ROAS and we miss for some reason, because something changes on the market, it can be even dangerous for the company. So I think I think the more on the UA side we have broader understanding where the company is going, how actually different business KPIs are shifting together with our campaigns and our activities, then I think it will be much better for our business.
These are some great comments. Thank you so much, Mariusz. So together, Mariusz and Thomas just created now a top 5 or maybe even top 6. I'm kind of mixed up right now with the items that you shared together on ROAS and campaign optimizations. This is great, guys. Thank you so much. And we have 12 minutes until the end of our session, and I would still like to cover one important topic, which is around measurement. And we already got Scan 4 being mentioned by Mariusz, by Thomas Petit as well. And so I would like to ask maybe Daniel Lupu to share his thoughts on that and on perspective on Scan 4 and how the UA managers may be ready for it, not ready for it, and what to do to be ready for it.
Thanks, Galina. Yeah, Scan 4 is a pretty interesting topic. And over the last 6 months, I think I've been talking to a lot of people trying to crack iOS measurement and learn as much as possible on Scan. And I think all those people had like a different approach when it comes to measuring iOS and scan in general. So while Scan 4 provides more postbacks and the conversion window is longer, I think some bit like measurement will probably still be problematic for some companies, especially those that have like a really long conversion window, like Paul mentioned previously. And travel is one of those sectors as well. When it comes to like a high involvement purchase, people would install the app, do some research for a few weeks, and maybe book a flight or buy a car in like 50, 60 days. And that would exceed the conversion window provided by Scan. I think in this case, it's really important that businesses pay more attention to the user journey and understand what happens after the install, as that will dictate how they need to set up their scan config. So in this case, I think that the config is one of the most important aspects when it comes to scan 4. But ultimately, I don't think we should rely on scan as the single source of truth. So an example from the travel industry, not long ago, we suspected that Scan was underreporting on those on installs. And what we did, we ran a couple of causal impact tests to understand the actual impact of those campaigns. The tests were run in a very controlled environment, and we noticed that Scan was underreporting, and the actual impact was a lot bigger. And we combined the two measurement models to create our source of truth. Now I know that a lot of businesses are using more advanced marketing mix models. So I think like as Scan 4 is a big improvement. I think the future will bring multiple measurement tools together, and advertisers will use the insights from all those tools to come to like a single source of truth. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great, Daniel. Thank you very much. I think we're all waiting for Scan 4 to open some more opportunities. And Thomas Tierney, I would love to hear your perspective on Scan 4 and maybe some more. What is expected? What should we expect in the future? Oh my God, closer to the end of the session. Apologies.
I guess Daniel's covered a lot of it. Fair play to him. It's from an agency perspective, I guess there's a massive educational piece for us to do with our clients. We are in the process of doing that. Obviously, when performance starts to look a bit awful, they're going to be like, well, what's happening? And I guess from everyone's perspective on the call is just do as much reading and learning as possible so you do get your head around it. Now, we know Apple are notorious for taking their time with a lot of things. So let's see how the next year pans out, which will be fun to watch. But again, I'd just say, I think mobile measuring platforms like AppsFlyer, Adjust, who else have we got? Can't name anymore. Branch, there we go. Like they have a duty, I think, to let clients know and people who are paying to use their platforms, because I feel like a lot of the information isn't readily available unless you are looking for it. So unless you're an expert in the app field, which a lot of us think we are, but it changes every day. So I guess it's still a learning phase for all of us, and it's something to watch out for, as we've said. And definitely just take your time with it to understand it. I'm still getting my head around it, most of it, some of the changes. It's confusing to go from one to the other. So I feel like I'm still learning, so don't feel like you're out of place. I guess that's the point.
That's learning by doing. I guess we're all kind of like in a way pioneers in the industry. So thank you so much for your perspective. And actually we're at the end of our session. We still have some minutes. I saw some questions and answers running in the chat, which is amazing. Thank you so much for everybody who is being engaged in both sides. And I was thinking maybe we can read through one more question before we go. And I actually like that one about the creative strategies for the app go viral, if there is a way to go viral without relying heavily on paid advertising. Is there a silver bullet? Because in what I see normally, what I usually tell customers, like there is nobody really growing organically to the viral level, or like maybe 1 out of million with this competition.
There is a silver
maybe
bullet.
there is anything. Is there?
There is
okay.
a silver bullet. You just copy what Nikita Beer is doing with his apps. He's done the same shit over again 3 times. Sold the first one for 150 mil to Facebook, went to shit. Sold the second one for 50 mil to Discord, went to shit. And I've seen a new clone appearing called Lit this week. So here's the thing is, when you grow that much on instant viralities, usually you're tapping on some pretty peculiar human needs in the Maslow hierarchy, but very often it goes as fast in the high as it goes down. Obviously working on virality and referral is important to complement UA, but be careful what you're wanting here. Like the apps that have gone the most viral, most of them, they also vanished very, very fast. Like you want to build a sustainable business. So we all want free traffic, but do you actually want it if it means you make a big spike and you die in 3 months? I don't think so. So be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Anyone wants to complete maybe with something a little bit less dramatic?
I agree. Definitely agree with that. I mean, what was it? Threads that grew ridiculously fast. Now it's it's the quickest descending app in ever.
Clubhouse, Flappy Bird,
Clubhouse.
10 years ago as well. Like we forget about all these fads, but especially in the mobile space, there's so many of them. Like they go huge, they go down. I think I would rather build a Duolingo than a Flappy Bird,
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Thank you very much. I don't think that actually it was that negative. It was realistic. That's exactly what we want. We want some real answers to some really pressing questions. So thank you so much. This was an amazing pleasure for me to host this panel. And thank you everybody who participated, Thomas, Paul and Danielle. Thank you so much. That was a real pleasure.